Okay, we'll wanted to just introduce a little bit just to make sure that we are not losing the context of what we are studying in chapter 1. As everyone knows, we are about to start from sloka 14, but wanted to just take a step back and understand this a little bit more of and kind of revise what the context was. And also, more importantly, I know there was this whole Mahabharata that was happening, and then the chapter 1 of Gita starts. But if you read Mahabharata, I don't know if they specifically say Gita starts from this sloka onwards. It's just an excerpt from Mahabharata, right? So quickly, if everybody can mute themselves, please, so I don't have to worry about it, but I'll do it now. So it's not necessarily like a divided like into these chapters when Krishna was speaking and all the war scene. And some there were like also some points about I don't think they chanted slokas when they were discussing. They probably had a discussion that Vyasacharya converted that into a sloka format. So, but the importance of introducing chapter 1 as part of Gita is significant because, as I mentioned before, the actual Gita Shastra starts from sloka 11 of chapter 2. Until then, it's all mostly context. And the purpose of context is very important for us to understand. So, I wanted to just take you through a few steps now that we've been studying Gita for a few weeks. I thought this would be very important for us to understand before we move further. So, if one should get the Gita wisdom, because Gita is not just a Purana or story or anything like that. It is a very intense Vedanta and also a lifestyle that Gita teaches for us to live and practically apply that in our day-to-day lives. But in order for one to understand Gita wisdom, there are a few things people have to go through, some important phases in one's life for them to understand this. And firstly, one should discover the problem of samsara. And what is samsara? And Gita happens to be the solution for samsara. Unless one discovers the problem, we don't even take medicine, right? So, this is understanding that what is samsara, and in various regional languages we have used that samsara the term into multiple different local meanings and flavors, but the actual Vedantic definition of samsara is something that we are continuously seeking something. We are not we are either worrying about our past or living in the past or in the future. There is less focus on what's happening this moment and enjoying this moment. So we could be thinking about, oh, what am I cooking for dinner? Yes, tomorrow, or my friends are coming there next week. So what am I doing at that time? Or when is this lockdown going to end? Which I was just talking about before we started the class. Or we say, oh, last year I had to do this, or I was very enraged when that person said this. So we don't necessarily think about this particular moment. And then we continuously seek happiness. Oh, I want this, or I want a promotion, I want a better car, I want a bigger home. There is always something happening. Right, and we think about, oh, how much is my bank balance to, oh, when will I get a promotion? I will think about my son, my daughter, and everybody and everything else in the world. But would we even have time to focus on what we are inhaling or what we are eating? So we don't necessarily focus on that. Those are all done in a rush, and I think most ignored is like our breathing patterns. So we don't even get time to focus on that. So this continuous seeking for happiness, something like in the search of happiness, we do weird things, and we will learn that as we go through Gita and why it is weird and things like that. But it's almost like we are in a hamster wheel and we are continuously going through it. And how do we get ourselves out of that and still feel the freedom and the moksha that we continuously seek? So that is the problem of samsara, and the solution is in Gita. And the second thing, one should become possessed by a sincere longing, and what Shankaracharya calls it as the Tivra Mumukshutvam, for freedom from samsara. So, a hamster sitting in the hamster wheel feels pretty happy about it until a point when it realizes that, oh, I've been going in circles and I have to jump off, and it doesn't know how to jump off. And the urge to jump from the hamster wheel continues to grow, and at some point, it does dare to get out of it. So, that Tivra Mumukshutvam has to happen. And that's when Gita starts becoming a very sweet grantham. Like, I feel like that's the best book there is. That's still like, so fresh. And every time you open the book, you will see something completely new and amazing things in it. And the third thing is one should realize that once this problem cannot solve it independently, and the maximum one can do is, like, as a limited human being, is either we rearrange the solutions, we think we are finding solutions, we try to change things, but we won't be able to solve the problem of samsara on our own. And when that situation kind of happens, that's when we surrender to a guru. In this case, we are surrendering to Lord Krishna himself. And through Swami Dayananda ji, we are taking that message that Lord Krishna has provided to us. So we seek their guidance. And when one discovers that the Sishya in oneself and surrenders to Guru, that's when the ground is prepared for Gita teaching, and that starts to happen. Even we will see that in chapter 2, Arjuna actually says these beautiful words, as chapter 2, sloka 7, I believe. And that could be used as a prayer on a day-to-day basis. That just put that one sloka. It goes something like this: Karpanya doshopahatah svabhavah pritchami tvam dharma sammudha chetah yachreyasya nishchitam bruhi tanme sishyasteham shadhi mam tvam prapannam. So here, this is the sloka where he surrenders himself to Lord Krishna and tells, "You are the Guru, I am the Sishya. I am looking for Shreyas," which is a very significant word in Vedanta. We will talk about it. And he says, "Teach me Shreyas." So that could be used as a prayer if anybody wants. I'll post it in the forum as well. So half, as I mentioned, like the first full chapter can then be divided into 5 portions. The first one to slokas from 1 to 20, they are description of the armies, the preparation, as we were looking at, like, all the different warriors that are lined up to do this war, and their instruments and things like that. So that's the description from slokas 1 to 20. And then from 21 to 25 is when Arjuna says, sorry. Where Arjuna says, asks Krishna to take my chariot and put it in between, like, between the two armies, so I can see everybody. So that is a situation that is highlighted there. And then from slokas 26 to 28, suddenly Arjuna changes his mind from this furious warrior who wants to go kill Duryodhana and all his brothers, especially Dusyasana. And suddenly he changes his mind because he's now seen Bhishma and Drona, all his cousins. So that change of shift happens there, which is the first problem in samsara. It's called as raga or attachment. And the next few slokas, from slokas 25 to 34, they describe shoka, grief. Once there is attachment, there is also the grief that follows it. And the next few slokas 35 to 47, where Arjuna goes into delusion, which is the moha. So the 3 problems of samsara are raga, shoka, and moha. Also, in English, it would be attachment, grief, and delusion. So that's how the chapter is divided. So wanted to just briefly touch base on that before we go into sloka 14. Who would like to chant sloka 14 and read the independent, like the individual words, mm, the word-to-word meaning, as well as the short description that's given there?
I will read.
Go ahead.
ततः श्वेतः ततः श्वेतैर्हयैर्युक्ते महति स्यन्दने शितौ माधवः पाण्डवाश्चैव दिव्यौ शङ्कौ प्रदद्मतुः
Awesome.
तत then श्वेतैः by white horses yukte drawn mahati syandane in the great chariot stithau seated madhavah Krishna pandavah Arjuna cha cha and eva also divyau celestial shankau conscious pradadmatuhu sounded. Then Krishna and Arjuna seated in the great chariot drawn by white horses also sounded their divine conches. Having described the war cry of the Kauravas, Sanjaya the narrator then turned his attention to Arjuna, referred to here as Pandava, meaning Pandu's son. The name given to Krishna in this verse is Madhava, meaning the Lord of Wealth, Lakshmi. Throughout the Gita, Krishna was addressed or mentioned by different names Rishikesha, Achyuta, Keshava, Janardana, and so on. Krishna and Arjuna were seated in Arjuna's magnificent chariot that was drawn by white horses, white being a color that could not be missed amidst horses of different colors. In response to the war cry of Duryodhana's army, Arjuna and Krishna sounded their conches, described here as divyau, celestial, because they were not gathered in the ordinary way.
Awesome. So we'll move to the next sloka if somebody else wants to read from here.
I can read the next sloka.
Go ahead.
Panchajanyam Hrishikeso Devadattam Dhanunjayah Paudram Dadmau Mahashankam Bhimakarma Vrukodaraha. Pancha, Hrishikesha, Lord of all the senses, Krishna, Panchajanyam, Dhanunjaya, Arjuna, Devadatta, Bhima Karma, the one of fierce deeds, Bhima, Rukodaraha, Bhima, one with the stomach of a wolf, Mahashankam, his huge conch, Poundra, Dadmau, blew. Krishna blew the Panchajanyam and Arjuna the Devadatta. Bhima, the man of fierce deeds and one with the stomach of a wolf, blew his huge conch, Poundra.
Do you want to continue to read, Anitaji?
Yeah. Lord Krishna conch was called Panchajanyam. As we have seen, the bows also had names. Arjuna bow was known as Gandiva. Dhanunjaya was another name for Arjuna, and Devadatta was the name of his conch, meaning that it was a gift from a god. Bhima Karma was another name for Bhima because he was able to do the most frightening jobs, both in war and in peacetime. Bhima never undertook ordinary work. For instance, when Pandavas were living incognito for 1 year, Bhima was employed in the palace as a cook. In fact, he appointed himself because he wanted to be able to eat a lot of food. He excelled at cooking in large quantities, the kind of cooking wherein whole pumpkins are dropped into huge cauldrons. There are two types of cooking mentioned in Sanskrit literature. One type is called Bhimapaka, cooking for thousands of people at a time. The other is called Nalapaka, named after King Nala, who was also a great cook but for small number of people. We might think Bhima must have been very flabby with a huge stomach and all that goes with it. However, that was not the case. He did not resemble a sumo wrestler at all. Here, Bhima was described as one who had the stomach of a wolf. It was so hollowed out that it almost touched the spine. A wolf is always hungry, which may be where the expression keeping the wolf away from the door came from. This analogy is a good example of what is meant by the word laksana. The implied meaning of wolf is hunger. Although the wolf is always hungry and eats a lot, its stomach remains the same, ever trim. But the description of Bhima's stomach being like that of a wolf, we understand that he was a huge man. Therefore, keeping hunger away was always a concern for him. Bhima also had a very large lungs and therefore did not have any ordinary conch. Known as Pandra, his conch is described here as huge. The conches of the other three Pandavas, Yudhishthira, Nakula, and Sahadeva, are mentioned in the next verse.
Awesome. Does anybody else want to read the? I'm actually going through these much faster. When I need to stop, I'll stop. As you can see, there's to what I know, especially Shankaracharya has not written commentary on any of these slokas. To what I know, these don't have Vedantic significance. The problem of samsara, etc., will start from sloka 20 or so, 25 or so. But there is one that I would want to describe in 21 and things like that. So wherever I don't have a lot to describe about, we'll just go through the next slokas. Who would like to read the next one?
I
I would
can.
like to. I would like.
I heard Taraji first. Taraji, go ahead. And Bhavaniji, the next one would be yours.
Ananta Vijayam Raja Kuntiputro Yudhishthiraha Nakula Sahadevascha Sukoshamani Pushpakau Kuntiputra, son of Kunti, Raja
And
Yudhishthira, King Yudhishthira, Ananta Vijayam, the name of Yudhishthira's conch, Nakula Sahadeva, Nakula and Sahadeva, Sughosha Manipushpakau, Sughosha and Manipushpaka, the names of Nakula's and Sahadeva's conches. King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew Ananta Vijaya, and Nakula and Sahadeva blew Sughosha and Manipushpaka. Although he was no longer the king, Sanjaya called Dharmaputra as King Yudhishthira here. That is because in Sanjaya's mind, even though Duryodhana ruled the kingdom, Yudhishthira was the real king, albeit in exile. Because Sanjaya never agreed to this war and knew Duryodhana was making a mistake, he never missed an opportunity to point this out to Dhritarashtra. Ananta Vijaya, meaning that which produces countless victories, was the name of Dharmaputra's conch. Nakula's conch was called Sughosha, meaning that which produces a pleasant sound. Manipushpaka, that which is decorated with precious gems, was the name given to Sahadeva's conch.
awesome. So was it Padmaji or Bhavaniji who wanted to read the next one? Please go ahead.
Can I? Or Bhavani, would you like to? Or can I?
Go ahead, Padmaji.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. काश्यस्य परमेश्वासः no काश्यस्य परमेश्वाः श्वासः शिखण्डी च महारथः
Drushtadhyumno.
दृष्टद्रुमो विराटश्च सात्य very difficult सात्यकिश्चा पराजितः. So I couldn't read with the tune, but
No.
yeah. काश्यश्च परमेश्वास शिखण्डी च महारथः
Drushtadhyumno.
घृतद्रुमो द्रुग्नो विराटश्च सात्यकिश्च पराजितः. द्रुपदो द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्वशः पृथिवीपते सौभद्रश्च महाबाहु शङ्गात्मुः पृथक् पृथक्. Can you please move the page? Yeah. Thank you. So you want me to read that?
Yes,
Yeah?
please.
Okay. I think you need to lower. I don't have the book, so I'm following my screen. Please lower. Yeah.
Because the first two
Prithivipate.
lines, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, from Prithivipate.
Prithivipate. O king, Kashyah cha Parama Ishwasaha, Kashya cha Parama Ishwa, king of Kashi, an expert bowman, Maharataha Shikhandihi, the man of great valor, Cha, and Drishtadumraha, Drumnaha is Virat, that is Drishtadumnaha, Virata, Cha, and Aparajitaha, unsurpassed, Satyakihi, Satyaki, Cha, and Drupada, Draupadeyaha, Cha, Draupadeya, Cha is an, the sons of Draupadi, Mahabahu, Saubhadraha, Cha, and the mighty armed son of Subhadra, Abhimanyu, Sarvashaha, on all sides, Prithak is separately on all sides. Then Shanghan Dumaha blew their conches. O king, the king of Kashi, an expert bowman, Sikhandi, the man of great valor, Drishtadumna and Virajata, the unsurpassed Satyaki, Drupada, the sons of Draupadi, and the mighty armed son of Subhadra, Abhimanyu, all blew their conches. The king of Kashi was described here as one having a huge bow. Shikhandi was also mentioned as being another great warrior in Arjuna's camp. Drishtadyumna, the first commander-in-chief of the Pandava army, King Virata, and Satyaki, another king, were also mentioned by name. In these two verses, Sanjaya concluded his account of those who had sounded their conches. Could you please, those who sounded their conches, in the Pandavas' camp, addressing Dhritarashtra as Prithvipate, O king. Sanjaya then pointed out Drupada, the father of Draupadi, the sons of Draupadi, and Abhimanyu, the son of Subhadra, Saubhadra, whom he described as one of mighty arms, which is a description of Abhimanyu's valor, not the size of his biceps. Together, these mighty warriors blew their conches. This sound is described in the next verse.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Padmaji. Would anyone wants to read Sloka 19, please?
I want to read.
Go ahead, Ajay Mahoday.
सघोषोधातराष्ट्राणां हृदयानि व्यदारयत् नभश्च पृथिवीं चैव तुमुलो व्यनुनादयन्. Saha, that, tumulaha, tremendous, ghoshaha, sound, nabaha, sky, cha, and prithivim, earth, cha, eva, indeed, Vyanunadayan, reverberating, Dhartarashtraanam, of the sons of Dhritarashtra, Hridayani, the hearts, Vyadarayat, pierced. Still,
is it still loading? I already up.
Oh no,
The
okay.
page.
No, I got it. Now I have to read the start from the end, right? And
Yeah.
And that tremendous sound reverberating throughout the earth and sky pierced the very hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. The sound made by the Pandavas in response to that made by Duryodhana's army was so tremendous that it pierced the very hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. The simultaneous sound reverberated and echoed wave after wave, bouncing from the earth to the sky and back again. The magnificence of the Pandava war cry pervaded the entire atmosphere, creating panic in those of the opposite side. Again, Sanjay drove home his point that Dhritarashtra's sons were no match for the Pandavas.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anybody want to read the next one, Sloka 20?
I can try.
Go ahead, please.
अथ व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पादे धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः हृषीकेशं तदा वाक्यम् इदमाह महीपते महीपते O king अथ then व्यवस्थितान् standing assembled Dhritarashtra the sons of Dhritarashtran the sons of Dhritarashtra Drishtva seeing Kapithwaja Pandavaha Arjuna one who has Hanuman on his banner Shastra Sampate Pravritte when the shooting about to begin Dhanuha bow Udyamya having lifted Tada then Hrishikesham to Lord Krishna Idam these Vakyam words Uvacha said. Then, O king, seeing the sons of Dhritarashtra standing assembled and the shooting about to begin, Arjuna on whose banner was Hanuman, lifting his bow, said these words to Krishna. In this verse, Arjuna was called Kapithwaja, the one who had a monkey on his banner. Every chariot had a flag, and each important person had a flag of his own. Arjuna's flag had Hanuman, the great devotee of Rama. This had come about in this manner. During their Vanavasa, the Pandavas went on a pilgrimage to the Himalayas. There, on the Gandhamadana mountain, Draupadi came across a very beautiful lotus with 1,000 petals and great fragrance. It was the Saugandhika flower. She was so enamored by it that she asked Bhima to go and get more of them. He went searching for them and on the way encountered Lord Hanuman. Hanuman, being the elder brother to Bhima, tested him, advised him on dharma, etc., blessed him and promised him that he would be present with them during the war to bless them. He offered to sit as a dhwaja, a flag or symbol, on top of Arjuna's chariot. Thus Arjuna got the name of Kapithwaja. He said that he would lend his voice to Bhima whenever Bhima roared in the battlefield and make Bhima's roar more frightening to the enemies. There is also another story not found in the Mahabharata. It is said that Arjuna once went on a pilgrimage to Rameshwaram. When he saw the bridge that the monkeys had built for Rama, he thought to himself that Rama need not have taken the help of the monkeys and could have built the bridge of arrows by himself. Hanuman, who was present there, read his mind and presenting himself as a small monkey before Arjuna, challenged him to build such a bridge. Arjuna built one, but it could not take the weight of the small monkey and collapsed. By the grace of Krana, Arjuna recognized Hanuman. He then asked for his blessing and Hanuman promised to be present on his flag during the war. It is said that Hanuman slept. Shall I continue?
Yeah, please. To the end of the sloka.
Okay. It is said that Hanuman slept through most of the war. Only when Krana talked to Arjuna.
That's Krishna.
Sorry.
No
I'm
worries.
so sorry.
That's not how
Only
how we spell it regularly, right?
so sorry. I should have known. Only when Krishna talked to Arjuna did Hanuman choose to listen. He found the war itself very boring, something like baseball when no one is hitting. However, when Bhishma came to fight, he would open his eyes until it was over. Then he would close them again until there was some other skirmish that interested him. This would last for a few minutes and again he would go back to sleep. At the end of the war, when Bhima asked him how he enjoyed the battle, Hanuman replied that it had been nothing compared to those he had seen earlier, the fight between Rama and the 10-headed Ravana, for example. After such episodes, watching arrows flying back and forth was like watching a game rather than a life and death battle. For Hanuman, sitting on top of Arjuna's chariot in the form of a small monkey, it was nothing. In his chariot then, with the Hanuman on his banner and Krishna as his driver, seeing Dhritarashtra's sons in front of him, Arjuna picked up his bow. At the same time, he spoke to Lord Krishna.
Awesome. So just one point to note, everybody I'm presuming understands that Bhima and Hanuman, both are Vayuputras. That's why they are considered brothers. There is also an interesting story about Hanuman being on the Arjuna's banner, or Arjuna's flag. There is a Hanuman Krita Paisacha Bhashyam on Gita that is not very popularly known, but Hanuman actually wrote a Bhashyam on Gita because he's been there on the flag and he was listening to it. So the story goes, Lord Krishna explained the Gita Shastra to Arjuna, and at the end, Arjuna said all his illusions are gone now. So there is a sloka, I think it is 1866 or 67. It says, Nashto moha smritir labdhva tvat prasadan mayachyuta. Basically, that he's able to see the reality and he has, like, all his illusions are gone. Suddenly, at that time, Hanumanji also appears with folded hands in front of Krishna and says that even his illusions are also gone. So then Lord Krishna then asks, how did Hanuman learn about all of this? So Hanuman said that he overheard the whole Gita from the Lord while he narrated it to Arjuna, sitting on the flag of the chariot. So Lord Krishna says, Hanumanji, you have committed two crimes unintentionally. One is you were eavesdropping. Secondly, you were sitting at a higher elevation than your guru during the class, which is not acceptable by Shastras. So he says, hence you will get Paishacha or ghost status. And I advise you to go to Kashi and write Bhashyam on the Gita, and you will get rid of this Paishacha body. So Hanumanji goes to Kashi and writes a Bhashyam, which is known as Hanumat Krita Paisacha Bhashyam, and it's pretty interesting. It gives a different flavor to Gita. So once he writes that Bhashyam, then he gets his body back. So during our Gita study, sometimes I would be bringing some references from that Bhashyam as well. And when I do that, I will definitely mention it. Wanted to mention it here to give you enough context of where it actually came from. Okay, does anybody want to do Sloka 21 and 22?
Can I have a small doubt. Can I ask
Sure,
you?
sure.
Swati?
If I
Yeah.
know, I will.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. No. This now Krishna is uh, Dwapara Yuga.
Correct.
Rama and Hanuman is Treta Yugam, right? So is you say when Hanuman is still present here, I mean he's been continuously living, or was it another avataram or something like that? Because
Hanuman
it's
is
two
supposed.
different yugam.
Correct. And Hanuman is supposed to be eternal. Hanuman is not supposed to have.
Eternal.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Oh,
we do expect him to be here with us in this yugam as well.
oh, okay. Because it's going to two different yugam. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Correct. No worries.
Thank you.
Okay. Would anybody want to read the next two slokas?
I can read it. This
Please
is
go.
Ratna.
Please go ahead, Ratnaji.
Okay. In fact, Hanuman is Chiranjeevi, right?
That's
That's
exactly
what
right. Yeah. Yeah.
every yuga he will be there. That
Correct.
is one
Yeah.
other. Okay. I may not be very good in reading the sloka, but I'll try.
Absolutely.
Arjuna
And
Vacha
go ahead. Go ahead.
Sena Yo Bhayo Vritye Ratam Ratapaya
Ratam
Mechuta.
Thapaya. Sorry, I'll just zoom it a little bit. Sorry. Okay, is that better?
Yeah. Now it's better. Uh-huh. Then Yavadeta Trirecheham Yodum Kamana Vastitan Kair Kairmaya Sahayodvaibhya Mastiman Ranat Samuddat Me.
So I'll
Did I
break
do
the
it okay?
sloka. I'll break the sloka a little bit. So the first
Yeah.
line of this sloka, sloka 21, was in the previous page because that those were context together. So that was given there. So this is only half of sloka 21. So here Arjuna is saying, Senayoho Ubhayoho Madhye Ratham Sthapaya Me Achyuta. So it becomes Senayor Ubhayor Madhye Ratham Sthapaya Me Achyuta. यावदेतान् निरीक्षेऽहं योद्धुकामान् अवस्थितान् कैर्मया सह योद्धव्यम् अस्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I can also do the chant format if anybody is interested. I'm not focusing on the chant in this class because we have a chanting class going on with on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that's why I'm actually not doing the chant. I'm thinking we'll just chant generally. I'll do these two. Arjuna Uvacha सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये रथं स्थापय मेच्युत यावदेतान् निरीक्षेऽहं योद्धुकामानवस्थितान् कैर्मया सह योद्धव्यम् अस्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So Arjuna Uvacha said, Achyuta, O Krishna, Senayo Ubhayo Madhye, in the middle of the two armies, may my Radham chariot Stapaya, I can see more, you place Yavata, so that Aham, I, yo Kamana
Yodhukaman.
Avas Yodukamana Avastitan, standing there desirous to fight. Itan, those people, Niriche, can examine Asmin Ranasamudame, at the onset of this battle, Kai Saha, with whom Maya
Yodhavyam.
Yodhavyam, I should fight. Arjuna said, place my chariot, O Krishna, between the two armies so that I can examine those people who stand here, desirous of fighting, and also examine with whom I should fight at the onset of this war. Arjuna had been waiting for this day, his D-Day, for what seemed like ages. From childhood, his cousin Duryodhana had done so much injustice. The sinful actions he had been piling up were directed towards the Pandavas, especially Arjuna. Arjuna was the object of Duryodhana's jealousy and hatred because he was the most beloved disciple of Drona. They had all been Drona's disciples, but Arjuna was the best archer. Drona naturally had a soft corner in his heart for him. Arjuna had not attracted this jealousy because of his boasting or pride. He was considered a most pleasant person, but Duryodhana had his own problems. His father was blind and was therefore not the king. Because of this, all 100 brothers grew up nursing a jealousy, and Arjuna was always its target. Therefore, Arjuna had been waiting for the day when his pent up anger could be released. Seeing these Dhritarashtras before him, his fury knew no bounds. He even forgot that Krishna was with him, not by appointment, but because of prayerful request. Krishna was seated in the front of his chariot as a driver by his own grace alone. Forgetting this, Arjuna commanded him to place the chariot between the two forces so that he could see who was in each camp. Thus, Arjuna told Krishna exactly where he wanted his chariot placed. He said, place my chariot in between the two armies in such a way that I can examine these people. Who are they who have come to the battlefield with a desire to fight on one side or the other? Arjuna specially wanted to see the army of his opponent in order to know with whom he should fight once the war began.
Awesome. So it's important exactly where Arjuna wanted the chariot and where Krishna placed it. So Arjuna would have been furious if Krishna went and placed the chariot in front of Duryodhana or Dushasana, all the past would have reeled in front of him, and he would have been furious with anger. But Krishna actually wanted to teach us all Gita. And also, the context is just after this war, very soon after this war, Dwapara Yugam was supposed to be ending and Kali Yugam would start. And Krishna wanted to leave a manual for us to deal with how deal with Kali Yuga. And this was an opportunity he was waiting for on who would I teach, and that opportunity. And so this is the opportunity that he got. As soon as Arjuna said that, he very nicely, probably nicely smirked and said, okay, I'll go place you in between the two armies, but I'll place you not in front of Duryodhana and Dushasana, but in front of, or even Karna, in that for that matter. But he went and placed it in front of Bhishma and Drona, the most respected people in Arjuna's life. Who would like to chant and read Sloka 23?
Can you?
Go ahead, please.
Um, योत्स्यमानानवेक्षेऽहं य एतत्र समागतः धार्तराष्ट्रस्य दुर्बुद्ध्ये प्रियचिकीर्षिषवा.
Yuddhe, there is another word in between. That's why it didn't come well. So Durbuddhehe, and there is a Yuddhe Priyachikir Shavaha.
Okay. Read it again, or
Go ahead, like, if you want to. Otherwise, if you want to continue to read, that's totally fine too.
okay, I'll read again.
Sure.
योत्स्यमानानवेक्षेऽहं य एतत्र समागतः धार्तराष्ट्रस्य दुर्बुद्धे युद्धे प्रियचिकीर्षवः.
Awesome. So you got your no Anushtup Chandas, eight syllables. It's easier to have all those 8 syllables together for it to sound nicely. Okay, go ahead. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Kapidwajaha. So it's the next page. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, Durbuddhe, of the one whose thinking is distorted. Dhartarashtrasya, of the son of Dhritarashtra. Yuddhe, in the battle. Priya Chikeshava, those who want to please. Ye ete, those who. Samagataha, have gathered. Atra, here. Yotyamanan, with the intention of fighting. Aham, I. Avekshe, want to see. I want to see those who have gathered here with the intention of fighting, wanting to please the son of Dhritarashtra, the one whose thinking is distorted. Arjuna wanted to see all those who had gathered here for the sake of pleasing Duryodhana. Therefore, he asked Krishna to place his chariot in such a spot that he could do so. Krishna, of course, being a good driver, did as he was told. Arjuna's use of the word mind with reference to the chariot indicated his frame of mind. He was a flame of fury. Krishna was only a driver of his chariot. Sanjaya then summarized this scene for Dhritarashtra.
Awesome. Okay, and we discussed, I think, on day one, a sutta, or what it is called as a charioteer, was not necessarily a high paying job, it's just a driver job. And Krishna did take that up because he promised to help Arjuna. And he was very egoless, right? Like, even in Rajasuya Yaga, we were talking about, he even managed, the area where everybody were leaving their footwear. uh, he was just doing the cowherd job when he was a child. So he needed to teach something to us, like, even I keep thinking maybe the equality of labor, even I think he was trying to teach us in those days. So it's interesting how Arjuna thinks he's the master and Krishna is the driver, till I think even the for like end of first chapter, that's when I think there will be a conversation. And throughout this, like, no matter what happens, Arjuna talks a lot after this, and Krishna doesn't disturb him, let him speak until I think chapter 1, first sloka. That's when he actually says something. Okay, so who would like to read the next two slokas? Go ahead, Mahoday. Would anybody want to take another turn?
I can try.
Please go ahead.
Sanjay Uvacha एवमुक्तो हृषीकेशो गुडाकेशेन भारत सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये स्थापयित्वा रथोत्तमम् प्रमुखतः सर्वेषां च महीक्षिताम् उवाच पार्थ पश्चैतान् समवेतान् कुरूनिति.
Awesome, very well done.
Thank you. Sanjaya Uvacha said, Bharata, O king of Bharata lineage, Dhritarashtra, Gudakeshena by Arjuna, Ivam Ukta, thus commanded Rishikesha, Lord Krishna, Senayo Ubhayo Madhye, in the middle of the two armies, Bhishma Drona Pramukhata, right in front of Bhishma and Drona, Cha, and Sarvesham of all, Mahikshitam of the rulers, Ratha Uttamam, the great chariot, Stapayitva, having placed Partha, O Arjuna, Samvetan, who have gathered here, Itan, these Kurun, the Kauravas, Pasya, please look at, Iti, thus, Uvacha, said. Sanjaya said, I have a different one in the book.
That's okay. I think there are minor differences between the different editions. I have a very old one, so you
Okay,
might.
yeah, I'll read what is in the book. Bharata commanded thus by Gudakesha, Arjuna, Lord Rishikesha, Krishna placed the great chariot in the middle of the two armies, right in front of Bhishma, Drona, and all the rulers, and spoke thus: Partha, Arjuna, please look at these Kauravas who have gathered here. Addressing Dhritarashtra as Bharata, Sanjaya told him that Krishna, thus ordered by Arjuna, placed the great chariot between the two armies. Bhishma and Drona were the people with whom Arjuna would have to fight. So naturally, Krishna placed the chariot so that Arjuna could see them. These two men were not only important for the opposing army, but and for Duryodhana. But being respected by the Pandavas, they were important to them also. Drona was Arjuna's most revered teacher. Bhishma was the grand old man of the family and the most respected person. Arjuna and Bhishma shared a very special relationship. Therefore, both of them were important for people on the both sides of this war. Both were considered invincible. Thus, when Krishna drove the chariot between the two armies, he placed it in front of Bhishma, Drona, and the other important kings, so that Arjuna could see these warriors. The place chosen by Krishna was the best vantage point possible, a place from where Arjuna could see everyone on both sides. Arjuna was able to see everyone just as he had asked. It is the first time that Krishna spoke in the Gita. Although the verse does not begin with Sri Bhagavan Vacha, the Lord said the iti at the end of verse indicates a quotation. Arjuna, please look at these Kurus who have gathered here. Krishna said. Now that Arjuna could see those who had come to fight on both sides clearly, we shall see what happened to him.
Awesome. Yeah. Now it's all building up now. Uh, and as look, as Swamiji says, this is not Bhagavan speaking at this point. It's still the Krishna, the charioteer, who is saying that. So there is no mention of Bhagavan Uvacha. It only starts in the second chapter. Who would like to do the next sloka?
I can do it again.
Please go ahead.
Tatra pashyat sthitan partha pitrunada pitamahan acharyan matulan bhratrun putran pautran sakhim stadha swashuran suhrudaschaiva senayorvayorapi Atta then Senayo Ubayo Api on both sides of the two armies, Sitan standing, Pitrun, paternal elders, Pitamaha, grandfathers, Acharya, teachers, Matulan, uncles, Bhratrun, brothers, Putran, sons, Pautran, grandsons, Sakhin, friends, Tata, and also Swashuran, fathers-in-law, Sudha Cha Eva, and well-wishers too. Partha Arjuna Tatra there Apashyat saw. There Arjuna saw paternal elders, grandfathers, teachers, uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, fathers-in-law, and well-wishers too assembled in the two armies. The word Kurun in the previous verse covered the Kauravas on both sides, all of whom were members of the Kuru clan. Looking around him, Arjuna saw every one of them, the elders connected to him from his paternal and maternal sides, parents, uncles, brothers, sons, and grandsons, all directly or indirectly related. In addition to these blood relatives, there are others too, such as fathers-in-law and friends. Arjuna also saw friends-in-laws on both sides, and those well-wishers who help others without having been introduced or being connected in any way. Everywhere he looked, he saw only friends, relatives, and good people. Generally, such people would be on your side, and those against whom you are fighting would be enemies, invaders, and outsiders. Here, however, Arjuna found on both sides only his own people. This was his problem, which was not an ordinary one. Whichever way he turned, he saw only his own brothers, uncles, and cousins. This problem represented an important situation for Arjuna and was the reason for the Gita to come about. Recognizing that everyone who had come to fight was related to him, Arjuna was overwhelmed with compassion.
Awesome. So I keep when I see this, I keep thinking, what would Krishna's smile would look like at this point, right? If you visualize it, I think he would have that beautiful naughty smile, and yep, this is exactly what I'm waiting for. Would be the kind of emotion, I guess. Okay, who would like to read the next one, please? Now we are going into the sloka that where we were talking about earlier, where Arjuna goes into the first of the problems, the samsara we were talking about. It's raga, or the attachment. Now is the first sloka for that.
Can I try, Bhagini?
Please go ahead, Ajay Mahoday.
तान् समीक्ष स कौन्तेयः सर्वान् बन्धुवस्थितान् कृपया परयाविष्टो विषीदन्निदमब्रवीत् सः कौन्तेयः son of Kunti, Arjuna, avasthitan tan sarvan, all those who had assembled, bandhun, relatives, samiksha, seeing clearly, paraya kripaya, by deep compassion, avishtaha, seized, being seized, vishidan, being sad, this abrabit, he said. Therefore, then he, the son of Kunti, seeing clearly all the assembled relatives, seized by deep compassion, sorrowfully said these words. Arjuna's compassion was born of distress because what was going to happen was destruction, and all the people who would be involved were his own people. Therefore, his compassion was too much for him. This was not some small matter that could be dismissed in the interest of particular practicality simply because war had been declared. When such thoughts of compassion come, they are generally dismissed by people. If we know something is not proper, we can usually say, what has to be done has to be done. The battlefield was not the place for compassion. Arjuna could not afford to be compassionate here. He had to fight. In the same way, a boxer cannot afford to be compassionate towards his opponent. If because his opponent is bleeding, the boxer's compassion prevents him from hitting him, the boxer himself will be knocked down. Certainly, seeing his opponent's blood, the thought will come that this is not the proper time or place to hit him. But then another thought comes. This is exactly the right time and place to strike. Instinct will tell him this, some killer instinct. Any mercy or compassion is quickly dismissed in such situations. This is what is meant by kripa, a compassion that is dismissible. However, when you cannot dismiss it, it becomes para kripa, overwhelming compassion. Arjuna could not do anything about his compassion, which was born of distress because of the impending destruction about to befall all of his people.
Awesome. Thank you, Mahoday. I just realized we are almost at 9 o'clock, so we'll conclude with a very short prayer. So you can jump on the Bhagavatam class. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaः Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanamastu. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the other call.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dhanyavadaha.
Thank you.
Dhanyavadaha.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah.